My name is Brian Kane. I'm the publisher. Chris Johnson over here is the associate publisher. If you have any questions about the publication at all, please just let us know. So the program today is going to concentrate on single-use technologies, and it's going to look into continuous processing as an end result of the single-use progress that we made. And right now we're going to continue with Jim Fury, who's the general manager at PendoTECH. His company is a sensor company, and he's going to talk about technologies and the qualification and application for single-use inline sensors in bioprocessing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Fury.
Hi everybody. I guess I got a pretty good lead in there from the last presentation in terms of sensors being a recognized area of technology. So the title of this talk is Qualification Applications for Single-Use Inline Sensors. And I'd like to thank BPI for the opportunity to talk here at the theater. There's the standard legal department disclaimer. Here's a presentation overview. Just give a little background on our company. The main sensors used for inline bioprocessing. What does a single-use sensor mean? The qualification approach of a single-use sensor, and single-use sensors for continuous processing. And that's a hot topic in the industry. Comparative testing a customer may do to get comfortable with new technology, some implementation issues, and integration to higher level control systems. It's a little information on our company. We're in business since 2005, and we're focused on automation around single-use, limited-use technology and process development systems with data acquisition locally and to higher-level systems. We're in Princeton, New Jersey. Our company members have many decades of experience in their respective areas in product development, project management, embedded software development, graphical interface programming, and mechanical engineering. And our products are broken in to a few broad categories: the sensors and monitors and transmitters, which we're going to talk about. We have standard control systems, mainly for process development, and some customized solutions. We're not going to go into detail on these products today, but we do have a line of standard process control systems targeted towards both upstream and downstream processing, process development, and almost all of these have OPC servers built in to help facilitate research data collection to a historian. This is a list of the primary measurements used for inline measurement. So the measurement also facilitates the ability for data collection and process control versus a simple mechanical type gauge. The main ones used by many people in the industry for filtration, chromatography, bioprocess. These are pressure, temperature, conductivity, along with the temperature measurement, absorbance, turbidity, and flow. And pH is obviously an important measurement. It's not mentioned here. Much of the single-use pH technology that's available is more suitable for a bioreactor versus downstream processing where things are happening very quickly, and the luminescent technology operates in a fairly narrow range with a slow response time. These graphics are pictures of our products: pressure, conductivity, UV-VIS, temperature, a Coriolis liner, and a rotary flow meter. So what does a single-use sensor mean? Some people will contact us and say, like, how long can I use this? Like it's going to self-destruct in about 3 hours. That's not really the case. And in the continuous processing information we're going to present here, you'll see how durable these products actually are. And it's more related to low cost, which is minimizing the disposable component by designing it to recycle as much of the electronics as possible and minimizing the product contact component. And in order to implement the sensors to your process, you really want to have a sensor where calibration is not required. If you have to introduce standard solutions and buffers, etc., you're really going to take away a lot of the advantages of a single-use system. The key applications are in both upstream and downstream processing. Pretty much any application, you really want to measure pressure. which is described down here for both safety and to prevent product loss. And any sensor gives you the ability also to perform data acquisition. But in depth filtration, it also gives you the ability to measure your filter capacity and prevent breakthrough. In tangential flow filtration, particularly pressure measurements, important to measure and calculate the transmembrane pressure, which is the critical parameter required to measure the filter performance. In bioreactors, the single-use sensor is used to measure pressure to prevent any product loss, to facilitate mass transfer calculations, and more recently we came out with a new monitor, which a lot of these bioreactors can only take about 1 psi, where the same sensor can be measured down to 0.001 psi, so it's giving people a much more meaningful measurement. In chromatography, single-use sensors are critical to monitor and control for an optimal purification. Here's kind of a framework that can be used if someone wants to implement single-use technology to their process. So this is kind of like a checklist. So one of the primary items relevant to any single-use component is the fluid contact materials. You want to make sure the materials you're going to use have the correct certification. We'll go through these in more detail. Performance, you got to make sure the sensor meets your accuracy and repeatability specification. You want to have the sensor made in a clean manufacturing environment because that'll be introduced to your process. You want to make sure it has process compatibility with any fluids used in the process as well as any conditioning steps. You want to have compatibility with any sterilization, bioburden reduction treatments, and you may need control system integration and also regulatory approvals. As far as fluid contact materials, this is really relative to any material, even something like tubing. You want to make sure that the sensor material has the correct certifications. As far as performance, you need to determine the range of measurement required in the process, what accuracy you require, and depending on the type of process, what type of certification you may need with the sensor to use it. In terms of the sensor manufacturing environment, this is going to go from the manufacturing environment right into your process. You want to make sure they're manufactured in a clean, controlled environment to minimize the introduction of any foreign matter to the sensor and sensor components, and also that the sensor manufacturing facility has a quality system in place. As far as process compatibility, before even doing anything like leachable extractables, you want to make sure you have just general chemical compatibility with any solvent used in the process. And you got to make sure it's going to withstand the process conditions as time and temperature. It may not need to measure across all those ranges. For instance, a lot of the sensors can be autoclaved, but they won't function at those high temperatures, but they'll function after. And you want the sensor to physically integrate to the process so it doesn't interfere. You want it to be a seamless integration. In this next area is where a lot of sensing technology has failed. Gamma irradiation and other treatments can be very detrimental, and it can impact certain materials, and it can also impact calibration. As far as control system integration, the user would need to decide, do they just want a local display, or do they want to have the reading transmitted to a higher level control system and potentially a historian. Particularly in Europe, there's more regulatory requirements such as CE and others, but that would need to be decided up front. You don't want to get towards an implementation and find out that something that you require doesn't exist. So this is just a review of the checklist we just went over. So this framework could be used for anyone that may want to implement single-use sensors to their process. And I don't want to say it's exhaustive, but it's a good place to start. So what else may someone do after they determine that the technology looks promising based on the user requirements checklist? A lot of customers want to do a comparative study to see, does this actually perform in process similar to my existing technology that's not single use? And this would be a very typical step that we recommended in implementation of new technology before you move to formal qualification. And this is a process application for protein A chromatography capture. and the chromatography detectors are on the column outlet. This was done in 2011. This was the traditional technology, and this was the single-use UV sensor technology. And this is something like the customer is looking for. They're looking for comparative measurements across all steps of the process. And this is a really hot area in bioprocessing right now. And in terms of continuous processing, it kind of doesn't necessarily change the user requirements, but it builds a few more things to think about into the potential implementation. And there's two things that are quite different when you're looking at a batch process or discrete process versus a continuous process. And one is the time and type of exposure. What will the sensor see over, instead of a number of hours, a number of days, 30 to 60 days? And the question would be, initial cursory check would be, do the materials withstand this long-term exposure? The second thing you'd really need to think about is more related to accuracy. Does the single-use sensor drift over time or change in calibration due to the extended processing conditions? So we'll take a look at these two right here. So this is, again, a framework that could be used for, I guess, any technology you may look at for extended periods. So across the top row of the table are our sensors: pressure, temperature, conductivity, absorbance, rotary flow, and the Coriolis liner. And the next row is the main contact material. And when I say main contact material, in pretty much all of these sensors, the main contact material is about 99% or greater of the product contact area. The rest is the sensing element. So initial check of the main contact material is a good place to start, and then you look at the others. So across the bottom row are the other materials used in the sensor. So pressure has a dielectric silicone as well as an adhesive. Temperature and conductivity have a stainless steel component as well as adhesive, and the others there are listed. So just take, again, a high-level view at looking at this. Here's a summary of the materials that would need to be able to sustain long-term exposure in a process. And if you look at these materials one by one, polycarbonate is a thermoplastic elastomer. It's used in car headlights, bulletproof glass, and it's the largest piece of polycarbonate ever molded is for the F-22 Raptor, which is made to sustain pretty robust conditions over a long period of time. Polysulphone is actually even a higher level polymer than polycarbonate, and it has superior properties. Dielectric silicone is a pure two-component mixture, and it's very stable over time with strong aqueous chemical resistance. The adhesives we use are acrylic light cured adhesives. They're used in demanding medical and electronic manufacturing processes, and they're approved in medical devices for patient contact up to 29 days, and they're also used for components that are used for many years. As everyone knows, stainless steel is a very durable material. Fused silica is pure, very pure glass, and it has better ultraviolet light transmission than most other glasses. And everyone knows glass has some weak points, but it's very durable too. PVDF is a specialty fluoropolymer used in applications required high purity and strength, and also for very long extended periods of time. Ruby is a very high hardness gemstone, and there's only two materials that are measured to be harder. The C-Flex is a commonly used material in TPE tubings. So looking at that's the material aspect, this is the technology. So the sensing technology in our pressure sensors is a MEMS chip, and it's a miniature electronic device formed by combining mechanical parts and electronic circuits. And the measurement principle is a piezo-resistive diaphragm in a circuit, and it has electrical output signal that's compensated for temperature also. So according to all the work we've done in documented information, the raw signal output of this chip is millivolts per PSI, and it has not been observed to drift at all over time, even over years. And the electronics that read this and the MEMS are solid state digital to analog converters that don't drift within their specifications. And there's also many documented long-term medical uses for this type of technology. And we've qualified aggressive but limited NaOH exposure for a conditioning step. So the pressure sensors are able to be used in extended periods and currently are being used in extended periods of time in long-term perfusion processes. The temperature element in our temperature sensor is called a thermistor. It's a semiconductor element, and it's very similar to an RTD, which measures a current being passed through, which changes resistance versus temperature. The disadvantage of a thermistor versus an RTD is it's more narrow temperature range. If you look at the graph here, 0 to 70, above 70 there's not much change in resistance versus temperature, but most single-use applications are not going to be above 37 to 50 degrees. So it's very stable over time, and our thermistor manufacturers indicate they can last for many years. And the thermistor itself is protected. It's within this tip of this stainless steel sheet, so the thermistor itself is not exposed to any chemicals. As far as conductivity, it has the same temperature element, and conductivity, the measurement principle is described here. Every conductivity cell has what's called a K factor, which is based on the fact that there's different geometries and surface areas, so it's standardized to what's called a K factor, and the measurements are standardized to millisiemens per centimeter. And conductivity temperatures are very temperature dependent, or the measurement, so it's always temperature compensated, typically to 25 degrees, so you can do comparative measurements. And as we just shown, the temperature over time stability output is okay. We recently did some testing on the conductivity over time. This graph is not meant to be read, it's just meant to really point out the key points, which is this is a 30-day trial. The sensor was filled with standard buffer and sealed with a stopper. And at the beginning of the 30 days, it read 15.2 on one and 2.0 on the other, so we had two different buffers. So you see over time it did drift up. But when we look back at the actual sensor and the buffer that was used, there was actually some slight evaporation of liquid, which caused the sulfur concentrate. So it was determined over time that the sensor did not have any drift within itself. As far as absorbance measurement, we use a photometer, which is a single wavelength light source. And it's transmitted through our sensor, which has quartz glass embedded into the wall on both sides. So the light source and detector shines across. And the light that's not absorbed by the sample cell as liquid flows through it is measured by the detector. And the important thing with this is, per Beer's law, is the path length. And we have a well-defined path length due to the fact our sensors are molded part. And the light source has a lifetime of 5 years continuous use or more. And as long as the glass remains clear and doesn't interfere with and create any false absorption, it can be used over long periods of time. So if the glass is compatible with the sample, it doesn't degrade, that could be used over long periods of time. The rotary flow meter measures rotations of a rotor that's within the sensor, and the rotor rotations are counted by a beam, and each one of these flow cells has a constant called pulses per liter, and the rotations are divided by the pulses per liter and gives you flow. The one downfall of this product is if something would get entangled into the rotor over an extended period of time, it's a frictionless rotor, and if anything gets entangled, it will stop turning. And also, rotary flow technology can't be used if viscosity is going to change in the process. The K factor is based on the specific viscosity of water-like materials. As far as the Coriolis flow liner, this technology allows you to use a traditional Coriolis flow meter and eliminate the needs for any cleaning or cleaning validation and potential sterilization. It can require it does require an aseptic connection because it needs to be fed through the liner, and it requires about 7 psi of pressure for use. So there's a lot of people that want to use this technology, but they maybe don't have pressure in their process. But it's technology that could be used for a very lengthy period of time. And the key implementation topic, so if you've gone this far in your evaluation of single-use technology and you want to implement it, these are things to think about. How can I implement it with no calibration required? This kind of drives metrology groups crazy that have been their whole career been trying to think about how do they calibrate, how they maintain calibration, because it's like a paradigm shift. And ongoing verification of just the monitor and control system integration. So here's just some brief information on each sensor and why no calibration is required. Our pressure sensors are manufactured at tight tolerances and they're 100% tested to be within specification. We also offer to users are required individual NIST certificates. The conductivity or temperature sensor is also manufactured at tight tolerances. It's 100% tested to be within specification. So for those two sensors, essentially they're the same. You can plug them into any monitor, whether it's manufactured by us or some people manufacture their own, and the sensors perform the same. Conductivity, it's a little more difficult. What we do after manufacturing is we pre-test each sensor with a range of standard buffers from 0 to 100 millisiemens, and we analyze through a MATLAB program the K factor that minimizes the error and makes the sensor the most accurate. That K is printed on a label, and when you connect the sensor to your monitor, it prompts the user to enter the K factor, and that's what gives you the accuracy. The single-use absorbance sensor, the only factor here really is the path length. In order to accurately determine the final measurement that you're looking for, you need to have a consistent path length. And being that ours is a molded part and it's manufactured, the path length is consistent. So in terms of the metrology groups I mentioned, so a lot of people want to implement the technology, then it kind of lands in the hands of the metrology group that has to figure out what to do. So one thing that's very wise is to perform some sort of verification of the monitor performance. So this is really taking the sensor out of the loop. Because remember we mentioned in the beginning with the single-use sensor, it's really a traditional sensor broken into two pieces. One is the sensing element, which is in the sensors we just saw, and the other is in the electronic elements. So periodically, people may want to just verify the accuracy of electronic elements. We have a range of tools and advice that we can give to people that do want to measure the performance of their monitor only. In addition, our pressure sensors have a test port where you can actually test the functioning of the sensor and the complete system of the monitor by applying pressure to the non-invasively to atmospheric reference port. So temperature, you can simulate a temperature measurement with a resistance simulator. Conductivity, you can measure with a resistance simulator. And for absorbance, to measure the photometer performance, we have a tool here. We can hook the photometer up and a range of these cells get put into the tester, and they perform a non-sensor related performance evaluation of the photometer. And finally is the control system integration. Our monitors that we offer, one of the monitors we offer has analog outputs, it has digital output, and so not only can you read the numbers locally, you can also transmit them to a higher level system. And this is just a diagram that would kind of explain that. And these two blocks over here really kind of represent your traditional sensor. The traditional sensor kind of combines those two together into the sensing element as well as the signal conditioning and transmitter function. Very interestingly, even though we're going to a digital world, a lot of customers are really still using analog signals. They're very common, they're very well defined, they're easy to test, and they're low cost. Digital technology is definitely gaining more prominence. So you have your sensor that's connected to a monitor that through some communication protocol, whether it's analog or digital, some of the options are laid out here. That'll go to your process control system, such as a PLC or Emerson's Delta V. And then from there, they typically have the capability to talk or to be an OPC server and transfer data to the plant historian. So nothing has really changed here. It's just the traditional sensor has been replaced by these two separate components in this diagram. These are the conclusions. The single-use sensors are very robust technology. The technology is ready to be considered for qualification in GMP process. The user requirement checklist is a good place to start. Qualification data may be available from the supplier, such as in a validation guide to help things get started. Again, they are being used in a wide range, both development, where things usually get started, as well as GMP production. And any technology really needs to be qualified for its specific use, with respect to process conditions and length of processing. And the single-use sensors require real-time monitoring of process performance and help evaluate new production platforms. So the single-use sensors, as we heard about in the earlier presentation, that was a big picture look. The sensor is just one enabling component that help facilitate people moving to the well-documented and publicized single-use systems. And the sensors can be read either locally or integrated to higher level systems. And this is just from our website. These are some articles if anyone wants to read a little more on some of these topics of implementing sensors, and there's more data available. And thank you for listening. That's the end of the presentation. Does anyone have any? Is there time for questions? Or?
Time for questions? We sure do.
If there's any questions anyone has? I think the question was about, are we doing anything with metabolic sensors? No, we're not specifically, but what we do is we partner with companies. So we're in discussions with some people, and we kind of have a very good expertise in R&D project management and kind of getting things ready for the market. So we would partner with a company. If they had technology, we could implement it into our product line and make it available. Nothing right now. Yeah, we actually, a number of years ago, we were working with a couple companies. We molded parts, and instead of putting the optical detector on like a bioreactor bag, we put it into our flow cell. We made an adapter where the material could be exposed, and the response time was very slow, because in electrochemical probes, the pH, it's almost instantaneous when you see a shift. And a lot of processes with inline processing, you're looking for a very distinct rapid change. And it was just too slow. And also the range is more narrow. In a bioreactor, you typically want to maintain about a neutral pH, where in downstream processing, you might be going from down to 4 and be looking for shifts. So it didn't give us the accuracy, the range, and the response time that was required. And I don't know if a whole lot's changed in the pH area, but we're kind of keeping in touch with some companies if that changes. Yeah. Well, that's been the Achilles heel of single-use flow measurement is the low flows. A lot of people want to measure bioreactor feeds. They're down in those real low ranges. The rotary flow meter measures down to about 60 mils a minute. There's some new ultrasonic technology on the market that measures single-use that measures down to 2 mils a minute. We're not working on any of that very specifically right now, but there is some new technology available that gets you down to 2 mils a minute. It could be a year to many years. We had failures all along the road in bringing out new products. And again, I mentioned earlier, the gamma radiation can really take its toll on a lot of materials in terms of accuracy as well as material degradation. So there's really no set timing. And we tend to work with outside companies in our development, and that it really depends on the expertise they have also. Thank you. Thank you.